Hello out there, all you QCAA fans, and welcome to another ISMG Explained video. In today's video, I'm going to be unpacking the ISMG for IA2 in General English. Let's have a look at the conditions for the task. So IA2 in General English is a persuasive spoken response. The length is usually 5 to 8 minutes, and there's no word count for this task. You must meet the conventions of a persuasive text, and this task could be delivered as a live speech or a filmed piece submitted. And the final is what you actually say or present. It's not the script that you submit to your teacher. This is what the ISMG looks like. It's in the three areas that are the same as the IA1. So we've got knowledge and application, organization and development, and textual features. You'll notice textual features is out of 9 for this task. In IA1, knowledge and application was out of 9. But in IA2, it's textual features is where you get most of your marks. So for knowledge and application, your markers are looking for how will you create and analyze representations of concepts, identities, times, and places. Your analysis of the ways beliefs, values, attitudes, and cultural assumptions underpin text and invite audiences to take up positions. So what texts do to make audiences think a certain way about a certain thing. And then you're getting marked on your use of persuasive techniques. For organization development, you're getting marked on the conventions of a persuasive speech and achieving the role of the speaker to achieve your purpose. And you do that by sustaining your thesis. You're also getting marked on the selection and synthesis of subject matter to support your perspective and your delivery of your speech or spoken text, and use of cohesive devices to achieve your purpose. And then for textual features, you're getting marked on vocabulary, grammar and sentence structures, and then verbal and non-verbal forms of communication. Let's have a look at knowledge and application. This is what a blank version without the descriptors, I should say, of the criteria looks like. So the first thing you're getting marked on is the creation of perspectives and representations of concepts, identities, times, and places. Use of the ways cultural assumptions, attitudes, values, and beliefs underpin text and invite audiences to take up positions. And then the use of persuasive techniques is that last dot point there. So when you're looking at concepts, you're looking at what, for identities who, times when, and places where. Cultural assumptions are what people assume about a group of people. Attitudes are when beliefs become actions or behaviors. Values are shared beliefs. And then beliefs are what people know or think to be true. And then that last dot point there, as I said, is persuasive techniques. Some advice for doing well in knowledge and application. So when talking about groups of people, narrow the focus down to one or two specific people instead of generally talking about a large group of people. It's going to make it more specific and easier for your audience to understand what you're talking about and build that engagement with your audience. This also applies to when you're talking about concepts, times, and places. Knowledge and application. So usually the texts you're using in your speech are charged with the beliefs and cultural assumptions of the author who published them. This also applies to what the texts are about. Authors who make text deliberately publish their content for people who value the same things and have the same attitudes for the people or for people to challenge them. You need to explicitly unpack the cultural assumptions, values, attitudes, beliefs in the text you use in your speech or spoken text, and then convince your audience of your own opinion. And this is how you meet the second criterion for knowledge and application. The last criterion for knowledge and application is persuasive techniques. I have some examples in the bullet points here. However, if you want my full list of persuasive techniques, I've got 25 of them there. You can scan that QR code. It's important to consider your persuasive techniques as seasoning of your speech or your spoken text. They're not the core of what your speech is about. Some other advice too, the pictures that you put in your audience's mind are 8 times more likely to be remembered. You should use the phrase just imagine to paint that picture in your audience's head. There are 3 persuasive rhetorics. So these are the styles in which you speak. So there's logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is appealing to logic and facts. Ethos is appealing to a sense of right and wrong, but it's also relating to the speaker's context. And then pathos is appeal to emotions. So the knowledge and application criterion is out of 8. Let's have a look at how you can scale up and down for knowledge and application. I'm going to annotate the criteria, and in my ISMG, I've categorized the descriptors and in green, blue, orange, red, and brown. Purple is what you need to do, and yellow is what you need to talk about. So I've really only annotated the 3 to 4 criterion in depth. So I haven't smashed you with an absolute rainbow of an ISMG. So I've got discerning in green, effective in blue, appropriate or suitable in orange, superficial in red, and then fragmented in brown as well. So it's important that you create those representations of concepts, identities, times, and places. You need to use the ways and invite audiences to take up positions on certain cultural assumptions, attitudes, values, and beliefs. And then you need to use those persuasive techniques. Now, what do each of those words mean? If you want to get a really good mark, I'd advise you pausing this video now and learning what the exact glossary explanation from the QCAA of discerning means. So discerning means discriminating, showing intellectual perception, showing good judgment, making thoughtful and astute choices selected for value or relevance. So discerning means it's high quality and it's better than effective. One down from discerning is effective. So effective is better than suitable or adequate. Adequate or suitable means you've met the demands of the task to a satisfactory level. Superficial, inconsistent, or narrow means you haven't met the demands of the task in terms of your knowledge, analysis, creation, or writing. And then fragmented is you haven't met the demands of the task, but then also your communication and your knowledge is unclear. So that's knowledge and application in a nutshell. Organization and development is your next area. It's also out of 8 marks. Let's have a look at the 3 pieces of the criteria now. So the first thing you're marked on is your use of patterns and conventions of a persuasive text and the role of the speaker, sign, and designer to achieve a particular purpose. So there's actually 2 things in that first dot point there. So you're getting marked on the role of the speaker to achieve a particular purpose, and then you're also getting marked on the conventions of a persuasive text. The second thing you're getting marked on is the selection and synthesis of subject matter to support your perspectives. So that's your evidence and the information you choose to use from the evidence in your persuasive spoken text. The last thing you're getting marked on, it's another one where you're getting marked on 2 things in 1 dot point. So organization and sequencing of subject matter to achieve your particular purpose, and then cohesive devices as well. So the first half of that dot point relates to the order in which you deliver your arguments for deliberate purposes. And then the second half of that is obviously your use of cohesive devices. Now, the role of the speaker. So, for example, if you're doing a speech, your role as the speaker is to convince the audience to agree with you on a certain topic. You need to be engaging and justify a central argument. To be engaging, you need to develop a relationship with the audience by using persuasive techniques and rhetorics as well. Now, to achieve your particular purpose, it means you're going to have a thesis, and it means you're going to have to sustain it and justify it. A good structure for a thesis is to have a topic, a position, and a rationale. So a topic is what you're talking about. Your position is your stance on the topic, and your rationale is your reasons why. This is my example of a thesis. I've got my topic in green, my position in blue, and my rationale in red. So I've said pet rocks make the best friends because they are loyal, trustworthy, and honest. So my first argument in the body of my persuasive spoken text would be why they're loyal. My second argument would be why they're trustworthy. And my third argument would be why they're honest. Now, the conventions of a persuasive spoken text. So, for example, if you're doing a speech, some of the conventions of a speech are starting with an engaging hook, using persuasive devices and rhetorics. You have to be persuasive and convincing. You have to develop and maintain that relationship with the audience. You have to use verbal and non-verbal forms of communication, such as gestures, eye contact, tone of voice, movement around the room, etc. We're going to talk about more about that in textual features, and then finishing with a call to action to motivate your audience to do something. Your cohesive devices, like IA1, you can scan that QR code there to get a full list of cohesive devices. You are marked on your use of them, and if you use them deliberately and carefully, they can snowball your argument. So organization and development, let's have a look at it color-coded and annotated. You'll notice there's no yellow. So organization and development in purple is what you need to do. And we've got those descriptors in the colors there. So looking at the 3 to 4 section of the ISMG is the one I've annotated in depth. So you need to use the patterns of a persuasive text to achieve a particular purpose. You need to select and synthesize subject matter to support your perspective. And you need to organize and sequence your argument for deliberate purposes and use cohesive devices to emphasize ideas and connect parts of the text as well. Again, if you're aiming for discerning, go back and have a look at that definition for discerning according to QCAA. And then hopefully you're aiming for effective or suitable. Lastly, let's have a look at textual features. So this is where you get most of your marks for the task. As opposed to IA1, IA2 for textual features is more about what you say and how you say it, as opposed to your writing. So your marker isn't looking for spelling mistakes. They're not looking for punctuation. These are the things they're looking for. So let's have a look at them now. So the first thing you're marked on is language choices for particular purpose. So we're looking at vocabulary and the modality of the language that you use as well. The second dot point is a use of range of mostly grammatically correct or accurate language structures. So that's different types of sentences and sentence structures as well, and a variety of those. And then the last dot point is verbal and non-verbal forms of communication. And there are actually examples on that ISMG for you to look at. And I would treat those dot points under that third dot point there as a bit like a checklist. And you can annotate your script to make sure you're doing these things when you actually deliver your persuasive spoken text. Vocabulary and modality, that first dot point there. So this task is a good opportunity to express some powerful and emotive vocabulary. The word modality means the certainty of something happening. So I've got some examples of modal adjectives that you could use in your persuasive spoken text. Say something is necessary, definite, total, complete, and certain. Be convincing. And then you can be convincing by using high modality language. Be certain about what you're talking about. Grammar structures in speaking. So like IA1, you need to use a range of simple, compound, and complex sentences for deliberate purposes. My advice is that simple sentences are particularly good for delivering powerful, short, and emotive statements. Now, just going through some of those examples of verbal and non-verbal communication. So my first advice is on the pace of what you're saying. So you need to slow down your speech or speed up in certain parts for deliberate effect, I should say. The tone of your voice matters as well, and it carries emotion. So think about when you'll change your tone. If you want people to be excited, sound excited. If you want people to be worried, sound concerned. My next advice for you is your body language and position. So when you're practicing your persuasive spoken text, practice your posture, your stance, your movement around the room, and your eye contact. If your speech is being filmed, it's also important that you make eye contact with the camera as well. In the first 10 seconds of your speech, make a gesture, a grand gesture to capture your audience's attention. Now, the use of visual aids, I always get asked if I have to be doing a PowerPoint by students, that sort of thing. And visual aids don't have to be a PowerPoint or a slideshow. They could be videos or images, and they are an example of non-verbal forms of communication. They need to be deliberate and carefully used. Don't just whack up a PowerPoint in the background for no reason. The other thing I always get asked about is palm cards. You can use palm cards. However, the more you use them, the more you detract from your relationship with the audience. Watching someone read from palm cards is not engaging, and it is an easy way to fail this task if you just get up there and read from palm cards or submit something that is just you reading palm cards. It's not very engaging. Watch good persuasive speakers. They don't use palm cards, so you need to rehearse your speech a lot to deliver it effectively. So let's have a look at the textual features criterion annotated. So again, in purple is what you need to do, and then we've got our descriptors there. So the first thing you need to do is make the language choices for particular and deliberate purposes. The second thing you need to do, you'll see that word range in there from 4 through to 9. So you need to use a range of sentence and grammar structures. And then lastly, you need to use those different forms of verbal and non-verbal communication for effect. And hopefully you're aiming for that top end of the criteria. So just to summarize, a few key takeaways. So takeaways for knowledge and application. So analyze the representations in your evidence and how they position the audience to view the concept. Create your own representation of the issue or concept and use persuasive techniques and rhetorics to justify your speech. Key takeaways for organization development. Have a good thesis and sustain it over the course of your spoken text. Use the conventions of a persuasive text type. Find good examples of them and read them or listen to them to learn their structure, style, and language. TED Talks are a good place to start. Select and explain quality evidence from your main text. Tailor your writing to your audience. The context for the people you'll be speaking or submitting to will be on your task sheet. And then use a variety of cohesive devices to tie your arguments together. Key takeaways for textual features is the big one in my mind. Use a range of exact and precise words for exact purposes. Use high modality language to be convincing about your topic. Use a variety of simple, compound, and complex sentences for deliberate purposes. And your final is what you present. So you need to practice your speech constantly because your final is, of course, what you present. Practice the verbal and non-verbal features in the textual features criterion, and you can even annotate these on your script to make sure that you're doing them and thinking about them and planning for them. Just lastly, before I let you go, the QCAA, like they have for every assessment task, has an example of a 25 out of 25. This is the student's written speech. You don't actually get to listen to them or see them presented. So this example is particularly good for identifying and unpacking beliefs, attitudes, and values. It's good for looking at persuasive techniques and rhetorics, modality, and then use of evidence at that discerning level. You can scan that QR code there to access that IA2 exemplar on the QCAA website. And good luck for IA2.